Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson. Welcome back to my amazing channel. My guest this week is somebody I'm sure many of you know. His name is Jim Vieira. He's an explorer, a TV host, a historical detective, a stonemason, and oh, so much more. Welcome, dear Jim Vieira. How are you, sir?
I am well. Thank you for having me, Danny. I appreciate it.
That's so good. It's so good to have you. We were saying earlier that we've been kind of jumping around for 3 years, something like that. Maybe longer,
Mhm.
maybe shorter, trying to like pin each other down. And well, actually, I've been stalking you is the actual truth.
I s-
Trying to get you on my channel. I think one of the things that put you on my radar first was your work with the giants and those excavations, not to mention ancient Sumer, your interest in Egypt, the fish people. I mean, there's so many ways we can go. But my love, where would you like to start? And how would you like to introduce the audience that may not know you to you?
yes. Personally, I studied economics at the University of Massachusetts. I bet you can tell I'm from Boston. I live in the western part of the state now. I have been, excuse me, a host for several History Channel shows: Search for Lost Giants, Lost Colony of Roanoke specials. Been on with Josh Gates, Megan Fox, Lawrence Fishburne, Ancient Aliens for about 5 seasons. What I try to do is I straddle the fence between the academic world and the alternative world and try to give an objective analysis of a lot of mythological or controversial ideas. I study the work of Edgar Cayce. I'm not dogmatic about it, but I find that ideas like Atlantis, giants, the nature of the gods. Into metaphysics as well. Like I study the non-dualists like Ramana Maharshi, The Course in Miracles, Advaita Vedanta. So I try to take it all in and give a hopefully objective analysis of what is often marginalized and derided material, which I'm not down with. It's more like um, allow people to have their viewpoints, but it's good to know how archaeology works, how to prove your case, but to try to bully somebody out of their beliefs, even if it's just their intuition, is something that alienates people from embracing archaeology and anthropology. So I try to bridge the gap of both.
Yeah, that's amazing. Before we started recording, we were sharing our friend Trevor Grassi, who's doing great work at the Egyptian, mythology, archaeology, and actual proving history at the Gaza, at the pyramids of Giza. Sorry, Gaza. Wow, that's so entrenched in my mind right now. And he was there at the ARE, the Edgar Cayce Amazing Research. And for those that don't know, I like to always remember there's always people coming to my channel who are just coming into understanding and blending and dovetailing all of the theories and proven truths of our planet together. And as you know, Jim, Edgar Cayce was known as the sleeping prophet. He was a beautiful man who had an ability to sit with somebody who was sick and then go into their energy field. And then he would channel information and his secretary would write down prescription. And he became so well known for his use of castor oil, a castor pack over the bowel that helped heal so many, abnormalities in bodies. Of course, that work was shoved to the side, thanks to Big Pharma. They're getting a beating now, which is nice to see. So yeah, Edgar Cayce, that's lovely you were there. I know that you gave a great presentation because Trevor told me, well, he told all of Facebook actually. So that's brilliant. So please do continue now that we've just covered Edgar Cayce for anyone that may have been wondering. And Cayce is spelt with a C, guys. Cayce, Edgar Cayce. You're welcome. Please continue, Jim.
Yes, Casey was he was born in 1877 in near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. He was basically somebody who went into a trance-like state. It happened because he was temporarily blind, and he went into the state and he healed himself. It's not him. He basically went into a trance-like state and tapped into like many clairvoyants and channels do, like the Akashic records, right? So people would come to him for health readings eventually. And what came through was a lot of the health readings were associated with past lives and karma. So we talked about Atlantis, he talked about Egypt, talked about reincarnation, things that were very disturbing to him because he was kind of a conservative Christian in his waking life. So he eventually dealt with that and went on to give uh, an enormous amount of readings, 25,000, no, I'm sorry, like 14,000 different readings. He essentially worked himself to death. And the majority of his purpose in his readings are about health and kindness and ways to live your life in a benevolent way. But on top of that, all this ancient mystery material came out too, and a lot of researchers dive into that. So I'm not dogmatic about it, but I find it kind of interesting to point the way and to see if it's the investigations can match up with Casey's readings.
Yeah, and they do.
And
It's remarkable.
one thing I was going to suggest is to share my screen and go through a couple slides to give context to this wide-ranging story of our past, because it's an important linchpin. Like, who are the engineers? Who are the gods? And if you want me to do that, I'd be happy to do it.
It would be rude of you not to, Jim Vieira.
Let's
Let's go.
Okay. Let's see. Let me. I like to laugh. I like to tell a joke. I get the tech skills of an Amish preacher, but no, I think I did it right.
You did it. You did it. Jim Vieira, let it be known, you are not as useless as a one-legged man at a butt kicking competition.
Yes.
You're doing
So I'll
very
start
well.
here. Here's my brother and I. This is during filming Roanoke. So as I said, I've done many of these shows for the History Channel and other sources. And let's see here. What I want to focus on is, who are the gods? Who brought the arts of sciences and the wisdom of civilization to ancient indigenous people all around the planet? They are all described in a very specific way, which is eye-opening in itself. These are the ancient documents, the Sumerian cuneiform Ugaritic texts, the Popol Vuh out of northern Guatemala. I'll show that these gods are amphibious, androgynous, self-fertilizing, genetic engineers who are often brother and sister, husband and wife. They sometimes have the appearance of hybrid beings, like fish and human-like creatures. But at the end of the day, they are not like us. They are the ones who brought complex civilization. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, because we're in a mixed bag world where there's a lot of control. There's a lot of, are we a zoo experiment of these beings? So, well, just keep that open and see how these documents are describing multiple layers of specificity in cultures that often have little or no connection. So we start in Samaria, where most stories do. And, Zachariah Sitchin gets a lot of run for his work in the 70s. His Earth Chronicles, I think, was the series. And he talks about the Sumerian gods creating humans, which it certainly says there. We were avatars, we were laborers created by these strange Anunnaki gods. But Sitchin went off on like a sci-fi, self-deluded series of books, I think. And not to diss him, he's not here to defend himself. But what I do is I go to the actual scholars who, because he was a scholar from the London School of Economics, and I'm an economist, so I dig that part of it. But he was not a translator that was had the wherewithal to understand. So he mistranslated a lot. The moral of the story is, let's go back to like H.V. Hilprecht, one of the original Assyriologists in Samaria, ancient Iraq. He unearthed the library of Nippur and read through 30,000 cuneiform tablets. And he was funded by the University of Pennsylvania, that houses some of his collections still. And what he found and wrote about was most remarkable. He wrote the androgynous nature of this ability to beget out of himself, self-fertilization, his own ego, the self-existence is inherent in each and every god of the Sumerians. All Sumerian gods are androgynous. Excuse me. So this sober academic, one of the most revered translators of cuneiform tablets from Babylon and Samaria, is telling us that all these bizarre gods are androgynous. Then we go on to find Oannes, right? He's the bringer of knowledge. He would come to the out of the water and teach the Babylonian people, the Sumerian people, one of the oldest civilizations of the world. And none other than Carl Sagan had this to say about Oannes. stories like the Oannes legend, the fish gods, deserve more critical studies than have been performed heretofore. Such hypotheses are entirely reasonable and worthy of careful analysis. So that's where I'm coming from. I agree with them. Somebody could say, I don't believe these ancient documents, believe what you want. I'm saying that Sagan, is basically, was spearheading this investigation. So Sumerian civilization is depicted by the descendants of the Sumerians themselves to be of non-human origin. A succession of strange creatures appears over the course of several generations. Their only apparent purpose is to instruct mankind. Each knows of the mission and accomplishments of his predecessors. So not only are they teaching the arts of civilization, they are teaching complex mathematics and geometry, metaphysical studies. It's like, who are these beings? Just amazing. Berosus in 280 BC writes about Oannes, and this is what he has to say. He rose out of the Erythraean Sea at the point where it borders Babylonia. He had the whole body of a fish, but above his fish's head was another head, which was that of a man, and his human feet emerged beneath his fish's tail. The image of him is preserved to this day. He passed the day in the midst of men without taking food. He taught them the use of letters, sciences, and arts of all kind. And when the sun set, this being Oannes returned again into the sea, for he was amphibious. And he's hardly the only one of these beings. So the 7 Sumerian kings in ancient times, in pre-Diluvian times, each had an advisor. The first one was Uana, that's Oannes. And it's very specific, like Sagan is saying. And here they are right here. They're carrying the strange bag that Graham Hancock talks about that you also find in Mesoamerica amongst their androgynous gods. This is what they're saying, that humans, I am a believer in natural evolution, but when it comes to Homo sapiens, I feel like there was genetic intervention, and many others do as well. The gods of the Philistines were Dagon, androgynous man-fish, and Dercato, androgynous woman. So these are very specific traits: self-fertilizing, androgynous, amphibious, wisdom bringers, terraformers. So it's like, you're a loser, that's a mermaid. It's like, no, these are androgynous beings that are being portrayed by ancient people in their most important documents. And this is the linchpin of the story here. We go over to Mali, Africa, probably the oldest, wait, 1 second, please. Oral traditions on the planet. It's a cold Massachusetts morning, so I'm going to put on my sweatshirt. I'm telling you, man.
It's a chilly afternoon in England, and I'm also wearing a big old winter jumper already, or sweater already. So,
right, I'm sick of the cold. I got to go out and work today and down the quarry. So we go to Mali, Africa, and right here I have the book as well. Robert Temple, one of the most brilliant academics I've ever encountered, in the 70s, he wrote The Serious Mystery, where he talks about the Dogon people knew, this is in Mali, Africa, they were an isolated tribe, and they knew about the Sirius star system and I think it was a white dwarf that shouldn't have been known about at this time. So there's a lot of controversy there. But, the most important part of this story is told by Olga Metelli, who met with French anthropologists in the 30s. And Grael was one of the anthropologists. And he said that the Nomo were the 8 androgynous amphibious fish people who instructed them, just like the Babylonians and the Egyptians you will see, in the arts of civilization. So here is a depiction of the Nomo. The Nomo and the bisexual paired offspring of Nomo were self-fertilizing androgens who produced the Dogon people and taught them how to live. All these sources are, like I said, laying out this case of multiplicity, of multiple layers of very, very odd and specific traits of these gods. So it isn't like this ephemeral, the sky gods came down and blah, 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 and it's just a myth, it's just a legend. For me, it's like well beyond coincidence. Here are the masters of speech. They can talk. This is the archetype image of the Nomo for the Dogon. So they were not only amphibian, but also self-generating androgynous by a special dispensation permitted only to them. They were able to fertilize themselves, being dual and bisexual. And this is what Olga Metelli tells us, the blind elder who studied with his grandfather for 20 years. This is what he is telling them in isolation when the French anthropologists show up. And even Credo Mutwa, the great Zulu elder, this is what he has to say. The Nomo created a lake around the ship, and every morning they used to swim from the ship, skyship, to the shores of the lake, and they preached to the people who assembled in large numbers. So once again, these beings like Viracocha in Peru, he emerges from Lake Titicaca. He teaches on the shore, and then he hits the ocean at night or the lake because he or it is amphibious and androgynous. And then we go over to China, and what do you find? The founders of Chinese civilization, you can go to Wikipedia and find this, are Fuxi and Nuwa, brother and sister, husband and wife, self-fertilizing androgens who teach the arts of civilization. And these are all tomb paintings, like Han Dynasty, super ancient tomb paintings. And this is Robert Temple, the professor in The Serious Mystery. The Chinese have always maintained that the civilization was founded by an amphibious being with a human's head and a fish's tail named Fuxi. Very specific, right? Like, what the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And just like Viracocha's kids, his children were brothers and sisters who got married. You see that a lot in these royal bloodlines, like in the British Isles. The Irish did it. In fact, there's a new genetic study that just came out that the builders of Newgrange and these the most ancient sites and sacred sites in Ireland were a byproduct, the remains of the beings in there were incestuous. They were brother and sister. And that happens, with Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and it happens in Peru and amongst the Inca as well. Like, that is such a bizarre thing to do. But what are they doing? They're trying to emulate the gods, I would say. So even in modern day China, the Chinese people revere and have festivals to Fuxi. He is the founder, and his sister wife is the founder of the civilization. And then we go over to West Africa, and the same story emerges. Olokun and his wife's sister Yamaya, they are bringers of culture. Sometimes sister, sometimes wife, literally means fish mother. Here is his, and you see the iconography, fishtail, human body, all these cultures. Once again, in Nigeria, they still have festivals to this being. You go over, and they live in the watery abyss. Like Enki lives in the Apsu in Samaria, this underwater palace or kingdom. So we go to the Nordic lands, and a Jair is an amphibious, androgynous, self-fertilizing wisdom bringer who's married to his sister, Ran, and they live in a watery abyss, or abyss is the wrong word, realm, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go over to Greece. The same story holds true. We know from Plutarch that the earliest representations of Zeus were a man with the fish's tail, an image which survived in Greek mythology in the form of his brother Poseidon. So we see this in iconography. We're told it's like fanciful and silly, but it is right there. And all these beings, once again, Hera, Zeus, they're androgens. They're self-fertilizing. They're genetic creators. And I think Zeus might be Enlil in Set in Egypt, and Enlil in Samaria, the malevolent god, the controller, the tyrant.
I'm so glad you said Enlil was the bad guy, because that just tells me that you're on the right side of history as opposed to fantasy. But please carry on. We'll talk more about this after. Yeah.
Thank you. And even the founder of Athenia, of Athens, was Kekrops. The original Athenians were called Kekropians. And what was he? He was the serpent and fish-tailed androgynous being. And then it's like, whoa, this makes more sense through the lens of this idea that this is a true story. Mythology starts to make more sense. You're like, who the hell are these beings, and why are they so specifically depicted? Now, check this out. This is Triton. Look at the breasts and the beard. You'll see that in Egypt too, with like Hapi and the other androgynous gods. Androgynous iconography is being displayed. Breasts and a beard. Derceto, Kybele, one of the oldest gods in Asia Minor. See, they have this adornment, this headgear. And then we go over to Greenland, of all places, and the Inuit have a goddess god called Sedna, who is also a self-fertilizing androgen. Gynoandromorphous, hermaphroditic fish goddess who is served by gay shamans. So it's like these specific traits So Greenland certainly didn't have any contact with Egypt or Peru. I'm not a believer in hyperdiffusionism. I don't think there was a huge amount of contact in ancient times. So how can you conjure your most important traditions in this way that is so bizarre and specific? That's my question. Once again, these are educated guesses about the past. I don't have a time machine. Nobody does. But as like I like to fancy myself as like a detective, right? I'd probably make a good cop or a detective. Just dive into the story, see the patterns, and just put them out there. And for the general public, do you see patterns here? Does this make sense that it's all fanciful mythological nonsense? Or, like Carl Sagan would say, it deserves further investigation. Even the oldest settlement, Lepenski Vieira in Serbia, they found these bizarre fish gods, I think about like 8,000 BC, right? You go over to India. I won't do too much. I don't want to take all the time, but just I'll hit a couple more locations. The same story. Matsei, the first incarnation of Vishnu, the androgynous fish god, he saves records from the flood, teaches the arts of civilization. Look at the specific iconography. Self-fertilizing androgens. Like, what is that, man? That's like a bad acid trip or something, you know, but it's in the documents. It's in the temples. It's on the the tapestries of the ancient Hindu people and the Nagas as well. These intertwined brother and sister self-fertilizing amphibious androgens match up with Fuxi, Isis and Osiris, Viracocha and Mamacocha in Peru. So we go over to the Americas and we find the same story. Husband and wife, brother and sister, amphibious gods, Viracocha and Mamacocha. In fact, Marcia Silverblatt, professor from Duke University, wrote about the sexual, that's wrong. What did she say? She said there is no doubt that Viracocha is androgynous. So academics will say, yes, the ancient people believe this about these gods. They may not say, oh, I believe the story, but this is how they are portrayed, and there is no doubt about that. So once again, how can Fuxi, Nuar, and all these other brother and sister androgens, how can the same pattern hold over the ocean in ancient Peru? And look at Viracocha. This is the Bennett monolith in Bolivia, covered in fish scales, the lower bottom, androgen, married to his sister, who was a fishtail goddess as well. So all around Lake Titicaca, there were shrines before the Spanish destroyed them of a fish goddess with a fishtail. And here's Mamacocha, right around Lake Titicaca. If you haven't been, I would strongly recommend it. Very cool place. So over in Copacabana, the Bolivian side, there was a large female idol with a fishtail that was recorded. And here are some of the temples that still exist on the shore. And this is what Graham Hancock says in, I think this was his first book, Fingerprints of the Gods. I had learned of one local tradition, very ancient, and spoke of the gods of the lake with fishtails called Chiula Umantua. In this and in the fish garb figures, it seems there was an out of place. I'm sorry, there was a curious out of place echo of Mesopotamian myths, which spoke strangely at length about amphibious beings endowed with reason who had visited the land of Sumer in remote prehistory. So if you watch Hancock's special, he's looking for these survivors or these architects, these engineers from a lost civilization. And he's kind of dancing around like his show has the fish gods in them. But I think he feels he's so far out on the limb and he catches so much shit from pseudo skeptics and debunkers and the Guardian, news outlets, that he's like, if I start to embrace this fish god theory, I think I might really just be too far out there. I'm just speculating, but at the very least, he is really displaying the same idea in all these different traditions. So we go over to the Popol Vuh and the Guatemalan lands. In northern Guatemala in 1700, the Popol Vuh was translated by Father Jimenez, a Jesuit priest, I believe he was Jesuit, and he translated from ancient Quiché Maya into Spanish and then into English. And what it says is that the very specific story we talk about the fish gods, and this is Kukumats, the androgynous god that creates humans. And the other thing is humans were first created androgynous. That's what all these sources say. Even Aristophanes displays the myth of the ancient androgen in Plato's own works, and then Zeus splits us down the middle, and we become this male-female orientation. So this is what it says. This is Hancock pointing to the Popol Vuh's mention of the fishmen. On the fifth day, they appeared again, and they were seen in the water by the people. Both had the appearance of fishmen, and they perform many miracles, very specific. And here we go, like, this is Quetzalcoatl. Did he have an advisor? Look at the fish dude in there. This is from Tajín in Mexico. Did he have these advisors as well? He was androgynous also, quote unquote. And look at the serpent. See, the Dogon said they're not really fish and they're not really serpent. They actually waddled around these Nommo. They were these strange, they called them Mascaras and Amidotus in Babylonia, like loathsome to look upon. So they specifically described that these culture heroes who taught civilization as these bizarre creatures who were just disgusting and loathsome to look upon because they were composite beings. So very specific iconography. And lastly, we'll go over to ancient Egypt. Hopefully I'm standing over the Hall of Records right here. Mm. And this is very, very interesting because there's a lot of talk about the building text in the Temple of Edfu being a chronicle of the fall of Atlantis, right? Hancock talks a lot about this. So I went, because I have no social life, and read the French translations originally, and now the newer translations by Dieter Kurth, the great academic from Germany, who, as part of the Edfu project, has translated the whole scope of these amazing building texts, which could be the most important documents in human history, as far as I'm concerned. And Manu Day is he's an ancient mysteries researcher who has been translating these from German into English. So I've been working with him. He presented at the Casey conference. He's a very good friend of mine. He's worked with Hancock. So I looked at the translations. I read through all of them, and this is what I found. The Ogdoad, the 8 brother and sister, husband and wife, self-fertilizing androgens, these important gods of Egypt, are amphibious. Look at the serpent and toad head iconography. And this is what it says. Yves Raymond was a very well-respected Egyptologist. The primeval ones who believed to be self-engendered, who begat themselves without father and mother, were the seed of their own creation. They're literally self-fertilizing. It says it in these super ancient documents. And self-engendered, begat themselves. That's exactly what H.V. Hilprecht said, and what the Dogon mythology said. So there's 3 different examples here. The builder gods. You get the theme. The point is, like, I'm not going to talk up my game, but I was the first one to realize that this stunning attestment, if that's the right word, to the idea of self-androgyny being related to the Egyptian gods. And even Khnum, the ram-headed androgynous god, just like Prometheus and his twin brother Epithemius and the Sumerian gods, are creating humans on a potter's wheel. Fuxi Nuwa, they do it as well, genetic material in dirt or earth. And then you go over to Peru, and Viracocha creates humans by genetic material and clay. And the Quran and the Bible, Yahweh in the Bible is androgynous, and he actually has a consort named Asherah, which is another story in itself. He's another one of these created gods, and I would say malevolent. You know, I'm pro-Jesus, but
you are so right. You are so right again, man. You are nailing the ass on this. Well done. I'm so happy that you're saying all the things that I actually do support too.
That's great. Paul Anthony Wallace is a former archdeacon in the Anglican Church. He's brilliant. He wrote the Eden series, and I'm friends with him, and we independently reached the same conclusions. Like, the Old Testament is talking about a malevolent God. The sky god is, that many modern Christians fear, is not a God of love and mercy, is not a wisdom breaker like Jesus or Muhammad or Ramana Maharshi. he's demanding sacrifice, he's demanding murder. It's like, what is going on? And that's what's happening in the world now. We have malevolent forces and we have benevolent forces. Even Edgar Casey talked about that are in this kind of epic battle, this Star Wars like battle. So just to set that aside, I don't want to like proselytize or tell anybody what to think, but if you read through the Old Testament, you're like, holy hell, this is a different story here than we're normally told. So Isis and Osiris, this is how they're depicted. They are brother and sister, husband and wife, self-fertilizing androgens, once again, amphibious, snake-tailed, just like Fuxi Nuwa. So you see as I wrap up the last slide here, these levels of specificity are what grab my attention. So this is the jumping off point. Like, is this worthy of further investigation? Now, some like pseudo skeptics that are they believe we're in a culture war, right? That I am not going to yield 1 inch to the alternative side, just like politics, two-party system, in which it shouldn't be like that. It should be like on its own merits. Is this worthy of further investigation? Carl Sagan says so. Anybody who has any kind of objective sense would say, I can't believe these layers of specificity. It is really quite astounding. And I'll end with Hapi here, the androgynous water god in Egypt of the Nile. Look at the breasts and the beard. Look at the iconography, right? Just like, remember, Triton in Greece. So in records and in iconography, we are being told of the nature of these gods. So let me wind up here. And let me just address one point, if you will. Doink. Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can.
Well, I've done this for a long time, several decades. You're writing, presenting, doing shows, talking at anthropology, archaeology classes at colleges, dealing with skeptics, dealing with true believers. And a lot of claims of racism get thrown around. And like somehow like this ancient alien hypothesis is trying to take away the accomplishments of indigenous people. And we'll quickly go over to Egypt to explain where I'm coming from. It's like when you try to denigrate someone or perceive them as an enemy, you will say the most like cruel and insulting things about them. Like, oh, you think the aliens built the pyramid? Ha ha ha, you're an idiot. And I've talked to, Giorgio has made this point as well, like, and talked about it. No, we're saying, who are the gods? The gods are revered by ancient Egyptian people, for instance. Did they instruct the people of ancient Egypt to build and to perform their miracles of engineering and civilization? That's the only question. And there are several, like the Assyrian, the Sphinx, and the Great Pyramid. Are they from a further age back in time? I'm not talking about Ptolemaic temples. I'm not talking about Karnak. I'm saying, is there an aspect of their civilization that is not late dynastic or early dynastic, but back to 10,000 BC? And it's when I go to Egypt, we tour with like Yusuf Awan, who's an Egyptian stonemason, and his father was the great wisdom keeper Hakim Awan, right? And he thinks the same thing. In fact, the Egyptian people believe that these gods were the ones who taught them, these amphibious gods, just like all these other cultures. So I just want to put that to rest that, Andrew Collins, Greg Little, Hancock, Brian Forrester, Hugh Newman, all these people I know that are ancient mystery researchers, Freddie Silva, on and on. They're not racist. I know them really well. They're like interested in the past. They're like humanists who like support indigenous rights. They're like, you know what I mean? It's such a weak. But of course, there's like neo-Nazis who think like, Nazi Superman built the mounds of American, there's weird theories out there. But because it's this culture war tribalism, it's like, let's take the worst aspect we can cook up and try to brush everybody with the same, flavor, if you will. So not to get long-winded, I just want to address that so people have some context with these stories. And when those tropes come up, to understand the context as well. So thank you for indulging me.
No, I love it. And what really delights me and makes me so joyful that you have no idea is that so much of what you shared there in that presentation, even though it wasn't in depth, because that's not what you came for, you came to share a plethora of subjects, and you did that very well. It's about opening doors in people's minds. And what you have no idea about, you haven't spent the last 3 years watching the content on this channel, have you? And oh my God, you've made so many touch points on it. Now, I'm going to give you one name of one woman that if the men on the planet in charge of the TV shows, your ancient aliens, if they had a pair of balls, which they don't, they'd get Elena Danaan on. Yeah? They are pathetic little androgynous boys. And I want to slap them all silly. I'm so happy. Now let me go through some points with you.
Yeah.
First of all, who's your handsome brother?
That's Bill. That's my brother Bill. Yes.
Hi, Bill. Yeah, I'm just playing. Just playing. So I don't know whether you can put that slide back up of you and Bill and the ancient aliens, because I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell the audience the titles of the shows that you've been on so they can go research you. So let's just take a minute so we can do that for you.
Sure. Hello.
You ready?
Oh, no. I'm going to have to go back in time. Yep, 1 second. Do. So we could take in and reverse everything I just said, but you see all the images. That itself, it's like, holy hell.
So
It's quite a
special.
story here.
Yes.
This is my low tech side right here because there's probably one button to avoid all that. Here's my brother Bill and I. And so, Search for the Lost Giants on history. Actually, the 6 episodes are on YouTube if you're interested. First season there. Search for the Lost Colony. Roanoke Search for the Lost Colony. We also did Roanoke Search for the Seven.
Roanoke. Sorry, I wanted, because you mentioned that before. It's not like Oak Island, but
No.
weren't you on Oak Island at one point?
I wasn't actually. Oak Island ran after our show in our first season, so I think there's an association with that.
Yeah.
I've been on like a dozen shows. Oak Island I haven't, because nothing I research has a correlation to the Oak Island story. But I've been on Expedition Bigfoot. I've been on with William Shatner's Unexplained, Lawrence Fishburne's History's Mysteries, Megan Fox, Josh Gates, Code of the Wild. We were supposed to do a third Roanoke when the plague hit a couple of years ago, so that's on hold. But that was one of my favorite investigations. That's where the lost colony disappears and vanishes.
Wow.
Also, I am co-author with Hugh Newman of Giants on Record, Giants of the British Isles and Stonehenge. If you go to Megalithomania, that's Hugh's website. There's like a Jim Vieira section with talks on all these subjects, on Edgar Cayce, giants, fish gods, metaphysics, all these things. So that if you're interested in this material, there's a bunch of talks there.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to share you. And let's go back to full screen. So I got a question for you. Do you know Brad Olson?
Oh, I'm very good friends with Brad.
I love me some Brad. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love him. He's great. There's a lot of you. And I'm so excited that you also know Freddie Silver. Had him on my channel too. And I'm going to get on Hugh Newman and JJ Ainsworth soon as well, hopefully. They're very excited. Let's go back to full screen.
Oh. I paused sharing. Let me see.
Okay.
1 second. Stop share.
There we go. Yay!
Oh, good. Thank God.
Hello.
I was like nervous breakdown zone. I was like going to be paralyzed for half an hour.
Oh, no. Oh, well, Zoom, they keep messing around and stuffing things up. The people running all these platforms have got nothing better to do than help us all into a new look and then change it because, they got to make their money somehow. Okay, let's go into some stuff here. Hugh Newman, Megalithomania, that's Andrew Collins too. That's great. You guys are all connected over there. I think you're all really cool. Let me see what else I wrote. Oh God, I wrote so much down. You hit so many touch points for me. After I wrote, who is your handsome brother? You mentioned Zachariah Sitchin. Now, you're one of the few scholars, researchers that I have heard say out loud he was self-deluded, because he has been used as a major figure for everyone to follow. And because we're all brainwashed and programmed and schooled from school to this present moment, we're told what to think and how to react and what to believe. And thank God you are standing up saying that Sitchin, there's so much shit that Sitchin put out. And it was also known he was a detractor. So I'm so glad that you did that. Well done. Avatar
Well,
self-deluded.
yeah, I'll give my also two cents for a second on that. That if you have a pseudo skeptic or a debunker, they'll focus on the Sitchin material. Like he talks about Nibiru, and I actually think that was a misrepresentation or a mistranslation of Nippur, which was the ancient city where all the library of Nineveh was found. So there's this whole mythology built around it, and there's a ton of holes in his argument. But
Yes.
what is true is the documents themselves, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and these super ancient Sumerian and Babylonian documents say that humans were created by the gods. They were genetically engineered. And yes, exactly. There is just no way around that. So that's where the focus should be, not on somebody's sci-fi grift,
Yeah.
if you will.
Grift. Okay, so he did some good stuff, but then went off on a delusional. And there's also some stuff coming out about him, about some of his other associations, because there's been, I call them the neptards. These are the nepatists, the families, the bloodlines, the ancestral bloodlines that are so obsessed with keeping their DNA straight. All you got to do is look at aristocrats in the UK. I'm British. Look at the chinless wonders running politics. They're so inbred. They look ever so funny, weird, and dodgy. They've all got weak chins. We call them chinless wonders, and I don't care. It's all coming out. So Zachariah Sitchin, absolutely not somebody that we should 100% listen to at all. Anyone that lives and wants to die on that sword, they're a bit dodgy in my opinion. You mentioned the you mentioned so many things. Okay, the androgyny that is so imprinted across all of our indigenous, ancient historical, architecture, artifacts, and not to mention how much the devil, Satan idol of Baphomet, but the Baphomet, the child-eating Baphomet, which is so prolific in Satanism, which is very, very prolific across every single one of those areas. So he's got breasts and he's a bloke and he's got a little boy and a little girl either side of him. That is represented too. So that you brought that to mind. There's 7 scientists, the fish people, the Akpalu, as they're known. The 7 ancient scientists of Enki or Prince Ea. The Nibiru wasn't. So you showed an image there of like Sumerians either side, and there was like a sun, in the middle, but actually that's a spaceship. That's called the Nibiru. So what I'm saying is you've no idea how happy I am that you, as a serious research archaeologist, you're on the same path as us, and we're dovetailing all the information together, and we're all coming into similar understandings, and it's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Jonas Salk, intuition tells the thinking mind what direction to look. That's what I go, because I go off my gut too. It's not like, my gut will tell me something. It's not like that doesn't prove it's right, but it sends me in a direction like this is where you want to investigate now. Read these documents. I believe there's, I'm like a Jungian. There's a collective unconsciousness or a global holographic mind that you could tap into and that can guide you. And Baphomet, by the way, is androgynous as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh in the Bible is androgynous. A lot of these malevolent beings are androgynous. This isn't all unicorns and rainbows. There are control mechanisms in the world that are clearly malevolent and warlike, and we seem to be caught in the crossfire. And if you're interested in this story, I would once again mention Paul Anthony Wallace.
Paul Wallace, yeah.
The Eden series, the same story. He gets into the biblical stuff from a scholar's and a theologian's perspective as well.
No, I adore him, and he is due to get on as well. I'm in England, he's in Australia, he's been away. I just came back from America, we're getting there. And again, like I said to you, it's so lovely that you and I we know, like, this is the first time we're meeting, like, in person, and we've been bloody chasing each other. No, like I said, I've been stalking you for about 2 or 3 years, but we all know the same people. We're all linked. It all comes together. Elena Danaan is an original Egyptian research archaeologist, not researcher, a qualified archaeologist. And it stands to reason that somebody who's going to gift all of the earth to space, heritage, and history would be somebody who had that level, that depth of pedigree.
If you'll indulge me for a second, like Casey and other mystics, clairvoyants, they say that you orbit with different individuals through life, through these relations where you assist each other, you awaken each other, you support each other with these same ideas. Even the whole drama around the Lost Hall records in the ARE, the Edgar Casey Foundation, Zawi Hawass and Mark Lerner, Orthodox archaeologists, were supported and funded. Their careers were at Penn in Chicago by the ARE, if you can believe that. Lerner actually wrote a book about the Casey readings, proving that Egyptian civilization was much older. Then he went in the other direction and became an Orthodox archaeologist. I'm not going to, take a shot at them. I'm just going to say they're part of this. Get your Hancock and Baval and Shock. I'll throw myself in there and Trevor. Like this whole Lost Hall of Records karmic story has a lot of characters who take on different roles. So to your point, yeah, you have these familiar relationships in this realm.
Yeah. And then as far as I'm concerned, like, all really nice people, and people that can also put themselves down, like, be okay with being wrong, being okay with being honest. Whereas the narcissists aren't able to. They'll take a pop, or they'll get defensive. Like, who's got time for that? We're all human, right? I wanted to
I
mention,
I
sorry,
think
go ahead.
yeah, no, just one of the biggest part of my journey is to learn about psychology, to see where I was entrenched, where I was defensive, because you can imagine I'm a shit I caught doing shows about giants on the History Channel, like out in the public, millions of people. So self-reflection, admitting when you're wrong, changing your thoughts, just releasing, forgiving, things like that are very important. And then one thing about me is, like, I live in a tiny cabin. I stonework. My brother and I have a stonework company. He pays all the bills. So I like to think I'm well positioned. I am not reliant on the ancient mysteries world. I really don't make any money off it. I'm just like, really, just obsessed is too strong a word. Just really fascinated by it. And I want to give an objective analysis, because I feel there's so many people who aren't archaeologists or don't understand these ancient documents want a fair shake. So that's where I think I fit in. And I like to think I'm well positioned, because I'm not tied to anything.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's so great because, in essence, it's like, you're not owned. Nobody owns you, Jim Vieira. So you get to say and do and be whatever you like. And that is the true essence of a free human. I love that. You mentioned the the Akpalu, which to me is a huge fascination, the seven great scientists, and the Library of Nineveh. The Ashurbanipal, one of the last king of Assyria, created that beautiful library at Nineveh that was burnt. And then the Great Library of Alexandria was burnt. And then Nikola Tesla's laboratory was burnt. And all these arsewipes and neptars are destroying, but they fail. And we just keep on coming back and coming back. I wanted to point this out. This is the Astrahasis. This is the first flood tablet from ancient Sumeria. And Elena, Danaan, and I went to London to the British Museum. We were covering Sumeria, the ancient tablets, etc. We made a beautiful broadcast. I should send it to you, because I think a lot of the images that you showed, it shares a lot of description of what and who they are. And again, it blends beautifully in the work that you're doing. The handbag, it's so funny. There's a frequency stabilizer. So the ancient Sumerians, when they're holding those little concrete looking bags, they're frequency stabilizers. They come in and out of this density. They're coming from a higher density. And again, as we go on our journeys and we discover things for ourselves, like I told you, everything I do is physical experience. So I was in my house in Hawaii when I was living there. I'm not living there now. And I was coming out the kitchen with a croissant and a coffee, and I suddenly saw this full-blown physical little spaceman. Now, first of all, he was a little dumpy thing, and he was in a white big, what you'd see on NASA, but he was an alien. He was not of this dimension. And it's instant, as you know, when you have an experience, there's quantum thoughts happening at nanoseconds, and you have all this telepathic instant knowing what is that man doing in my house in a spacesuit. He was wearing a fully glass helmet all the way, and inside the helmet, he had like it was like dreadlocks, like tentacles, and then there was fluid at the bottom. And I realized in that second that the fluid, it was purple. I knew it was acidic. And I knew that that being, whatever density he'd come from, he couldn't just walk into our existence. And this is again the crossover between the reality and fantasy, the spiritual fantasies that people go into, or a reality of there are extraterrestrials that exist. Obviously, we see it from ancient Sumeria and before, all the way to this present day. And they cannot, we assume because of the new age being a socially engineered psyop, there's no such thing as new age, doesn't exist. What is always been there. You know, they try and make us feel stupid, look stupid. And so for me, like the physical representation of going, oh yeah, that little man is from elsewhere off the planet. He was there actually to guard me. And because I was coming out with information that, you know, people don't want out on the planet. Oh, you know, so but too bad, so sad. But it's important. And so when we see these depictions of them holding the pineal or the pine cone, which represents the pineal gland, that's another way they directly communicate with us. The piezoelectricity is sparked. The bag they're holding is a frequency densifier, which helps their structure, molecular structure, become more dense as they're stepping into this third density environment. That's what I truly believe. Go ahead.
Well, you'll like my corroborative piece of information. I, too, like Hancock, are interested in what's in the bag because in Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, in the oldest representation at La Venta, probably between 12 and 1800 BC, is the androgynous Quetzalcoatl has one of those bags, and several other depictions of Cucumatz, the androgynous being, as well have it. The serpent-headed guy I showed. So you have it on both sides of the Atlantic. So Michaela Sheridan, I hope I get your name right, Michaela, friend of mine, and Ethan Fox, her partner, they run the Awaken and Empowered Expo for several years in Detroit. Now she's a very famous channel. So I had a session with her, and she like channels these collectives, right? And I know for some people this is out there. You know, when there's a cold case, you call in psychics. That's what I say, and you evaluate. They might point you in the right direction. I asked the Anunnaki collective, what is in the bag? What is that? They said it's an ancient technology that allows these beings to exist temporarily within our atmosphere. That is the answer
See?
they gave me. Yeah.
Woohoo! Love
So I
it.
found that interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. See more corroboration. And then, you know, you and I having this chat will help a lot of other people who are on their wonderful, you know, archaeology journeys, but they're just slightly off track. And then some big blonde bird like me comes along, gobbing off with you. And then people go, oh, yeah, not sure about that. But it doesn't matter. How we get the information is how we get the information. And it's important that none of us hold it back.
Okay. Let me interject for a second, if you would. The the gods create the giants and then destroy them in the flood. The gods create first humans as androgynous, like I just said, right? So there's this wonderful academic archaeologist, Ered Ziffer. She lives in Haifa, Israel. She wrote the paper in 2007, Israeli Exploration Journal. Adam, the first androgyny in the Ayin Gazal two-headed statues. She is claiming that the double-headed statues at Ayin Gazal, Spring of the Gazelle in Jordan, one of the most ancient sites on Earth, is a representation of the gods or the first humans as androgynous. And at Chet el Hayuk, at all these other sites, the most ancient sites on Earth, they found the double-headed statue and polydactylism, extra digits, an attribute of the gods, it was thought, or the first humans. So we're pitching a show with our production team. I think it was Discovery at the time, a couple of years ago, before they excavated Karahan Tepe in Turkey. Me, Hugh Newman, and my brother Bill, we're going to do megalith men. We were going to explore the origins of the megalith builders around the world. And one of the episodes that I outlined and wrote up was an excavation of Karahan Tepe. Hugh at the time knew the landowner. It wasn't excavated. And what I wrote is what we want. We want to hire a contract archaeology team from Turkey, dig, and we wanted to find statues with extra digits and double-headed iconography that displayed the androgynous nature of the gods and first humans. So we didn't get picked up for some reason. You'll see they should have grabbed our show. Professor Karul from Istanbul, they excavated Karahan Tepe, as Hugh and Andrew and all the guys are talking about. They found a statue with 16 fingers that we talked about on Ancient Aliens in the episode of Lost City, and they found a double-headed idol representing this androgyny at the oldest site on Earth. And they just found at Saybirch this panel, the oldest narrative in the world, and a guy is holding up his hand and he has 6 fingers. And Professor Karul says the humanoids all around the super ancient sites of Turkey they all have strange numbers of digits, never 5. So for me, it's right. So yeah, this guy, he got this wild theory. He's way out there. I'm not Nostradamus, but the androgyny and the polydactyls and the extra digits they find in the most ancient cities on Earth are being displayed in real time at these super ancient sites. So that to me is like, you're on the right path. Thank you for letting me share that story, because I think it's really cool.
Oh no, God, we're here to share absolutely everything. Please do not
Well,
hold back.
I'm a recovering Catholic, so I got all these issues, you know what I mean?
Well, talking of recovering Catholics, another point you made here, you just mentioned the Karahan Tepe, and I had Andrew Collins on my channel recently for I interviewed him, I think it was last year when he wrote Sebekna Pharaoh, the first female pharaoh. We went over that book, and Andrew Collins, very well known, good long pedigree of, and he's quite the character with his hair. And then I had him on, I think last week, the week before, on the new book on Karahan Tepe, which, as you said, you guys have been out there excavating and really reporting on the new historical information. Now, I heard something quite disgusting, which I believe, because the men I'm going to mention are the foulest creatures, the lowest of the low scummery. Klaus Schwab, I call him Clown Schwab. These are self-anointed, self-appointed bollock heads. I heard that they were running a job and interfering now and concreting over parts of Göbekli Tepe. Now, have you heard that? Is that true?
I know Jimmy Corsetti from Bright Insight. He does a lot of videos where he talks about those things about the WEF, the World Economic Forum, their associations with certain ancient sites. Yeah, for me, like I can't tell you that, that's a good Hugh question and Andrew question, because they just got back from Turkey. The way I view it is that if somebody is outwardly showing an agenda that they're not open-minded, they don't want to excavate the most important sites in human history, then that's a huge red flag. That's like, I'll pat Andrew on the back as well. Debbie Cartwright and Andrew, a couple months ago, I'm watching a video they're doing with Hugh, and they show Urfa Man, one of the most ancient statues on the planet. And I've been looking at Urfa Man kind of bummed out, because I figured it'd be androgynous, because so many, like the Killisik Man the iconography is everywhere. But what they found out is that actually Urfa Man has male and female genitals. So it's not Urfa Man, it's another androgynous god, which is a stunning, alternative find that supports all these other ideas. For me, I just feel like there's a lot of conspiracies that are true. There's a lot of malevolent activity. It's just, you can't get around it. We have the Federal Reserve printing trillions of dollars, endless wars that are hopefully coming to an end as people wake up to these malevolent actions of bad actors. So, I try not to dwell too much on that, but it's good to know that you don't want to be naive at the same time. So for me, I think there's enough that has been produced, and more will be produced from ancient sites around the world. And I just think when you have the general public waking up, the game isn't going to work anymore, and that's the most important thing, because it's critical mass.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing seeing these people just no longer buying kind of the narratives that the media push on us. But yeah, the Muppets that run the WEF, they they're trying to delete or redact ancient history because and wiping as many of us off the planet at the same time, so they can then create a whole new history for the next generations, and continue the manipulation that they've been doing. And it's just quite incredible that it's all out, and that we will stop them from interfering with the true nature of history. The self-appointed, self-anointed, and it's like the executive orders. Every time a new president gets in, all they do the first few days is peacock or pontificate and scratch all the executive orders, all the hard work of the last president or the work of the last president. Like the ancient pharaohs, every time a new pharaoh came to power, they would delete their iconography, their statues, their temples, and just try and erase them. This peacocking of the human has been going on for so long. Gosh, I'm so bored of it. But again, it's something. It's part of you mentioned that you're into psychology, me also, yeah, there's something really interesting to look at there as we're all kind of coming. But like you said, critical mass, boom, 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 boom. Now the awakening is just incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's when you follow people, evaluate their agenda, even in the alternative realm, right? Because there's no peer review in the alternative world. So if I told you one side of a story, I could sound very compelling, or I could say, "Hey, this gig is pretty good. I'm doing TV shows. I could tell people what they want to hear. Oh, I met with this whistleblower, and they told me exactly, and they worked at the secret lab, and I'm not disparaging anybody. I'm just saying that you can, is somebody self-reflective? Is somebody explain the dynamics, or are they constantly in this like orientation of blaming the other side or denigrating or ridiculing people rather than they can, the pseudo skeptics can believe what they want. I think I make a case for worthy of further investigation. Like when you follow people, and a lot of the people I mentioned are good-hearted, well-meaning people who do really good work, but there's grifters out there too on the alternative side once again. So it's like, keep your senses sharp and to see the orientation of the person, and are they like, self-congratulatory? Are they creating their own brand, or are they just trying to share information because they care, because their lives are oriented not about self-gain, about helping people, about being thoughtful, about being kind and considerate. That's the tell and the read, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And the humbleness too. What I do as part of my broadcasting is I have a real go. I hammer people like Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates. I do it on purpose and I do it over and over and over because it's some small part. I'm hoping that I can help people who are so brainwashed into focusing on authority that when they learn, disrespect the self-anointed and self-appointed, disrespect them, break free. I trigger people, I piss them off, and I can't help that part. It's just the way that people respond. But the more that we say to them, hey, you guys are powerful, like what you're saying, watch the people delivering. Is there light in their eyes? Is there passion? Do you resonate? Are they triggering you? If they're triggering you, why? Why? Do you want to hold on to believing in someone over here? Or can you be open-minded? This is the time now. There's no more holding back. Now, speaking of authorities, one of the first things I noticed about you, I don't know whether it was on telly or it was just on a documentary online, I don't remember, but it was years ago, because you've been around a long time, mister. I mean that in a good way, as in you're a long timer, you've been in the field for a long time. Please share with us anything that you wish to on the giants, the lost giants, which is one of your areas of specialty, isn't it?
Quite by accident. I started studying Native American stonework, what I think is Native American stonework, where I live here in Massachusetts, out in the woods, finding what I believe were native ceremonial structures. And then I started reading through the town and county histories, to seeing property lines, to see if the colonists encountered Native American stonework, which in fact they did, and it was documented. But I started to unearth all these bizarre giant skeleton finds, and it just piqued my interest. And I found the same thing. The entire country, buried in these obscure, voluminous texts, were these very specific accounts of enormous skeletons being unearthed, measured, cataloged, not by drunken farmers always, but by like accredited professionals. The Smithsonian's own ethnology reports, their scientists unearth some rather huge skeletons. And then it's a worldwide phenomenon, you know. And I would say, look at like all the Native American, virtually every Native American tribe in the United States has legends of giants. Sometimes they're wisdom keepers and benevolent. Sometimes they're cannibalistic and malevolent. The great Lakota Sioux elder Vine Deloria, in the late 90s, he arranged in Seattle, Washington, a conference with all elders from around the country to share their wisdom about giants and little people as well, and cataclysms. And it's like they all have the same mythology or oral traditions, I would say. So that right there is like, I've met with a lot of elders. Clifford Mahooty, Zuni elder. I spent a lot of time with him.
Ah,
He was a good friend of mine. He passed.
beautiful.
Mohawk elders, Cree, you know, Lakota, Hopi, and they tell me the same story over and over again. But it's a story that carries to isolated Pacific Islands, to Australia. Um, and one trait of the giants, I'll say, in the Bible, the giant of Gath has 6 fingers and 6 toes, 24 digits in all, right? So polydactylism is a rare genetic condition in humans, but there is no gigantism associated with that. So the entire globe is littered with giant hands and feet and rock arts and statues portraying these giants with extra digits. Baja California, you have these giant beings, and they have 6 fingers. You go to North Carolina, Judaculla, the 7-fingered giant that the Cherokee talk about. It's emblazoned on the Judaculla stone there. You go to England, Cornwall, the giants of Tremont. They had 6 fingers and 6 toes. You go to Australia. Professor Paul Tasson just wrote about the oldest narrative in human history found by the Aboriginal people. And he wrote a paper on how every time you see giant feet, they have 6 toes. They're always huge. And, you know, this is all online. I'm writing a book about this right now. So how can it be, even isolated Pacific islands like Kiribati have giant footprints with extra digits? Botswana, the place of emergence of Matsing, there's an academic paper written about it. It's a sacred place. You can Google it. The giant had 6 toes. So the moral of the story is like, hidden in plain sight is this story of giants. The giants were created by the gods. They were mostly destroyed in the flood. Some survived. They were in the Holy Land. Moses sends out his scouts. We were grasshoppers in their presence. There were 23 references in the Bible. Gilgamesh in the book of Enoch is a giant. On and on and on. So it's, for me, nobody has a time machine. I think it's almost, I wouldn't call it racist. I would think it's disrespectful for academics to ignore the oral traditions of indigenous people. What they kind of throw our way, the pseudo skeptics anyway, like the agitated wing of the academic world. Most academics are great men and women who just go about their business in a very humble and helpful. But you have an agitated radical wing that attacks endlessly Graham Hancock and insults people and gives a bad name to those fields. But I would say that I think it's bad science not to listen to the indigenous wisdom. And I've done like all kinds of ayahuasca ceremonies and sat with elders, and not only the humility, but the integrity of so many indigenous people. It's like, they're not just blowing smoke here. There's a real story here. What is that story? And the engineers and the gods that I mentioned, they're the ones who create humans, and they create the giants. And that's just the way you can say, I don't believe that. That's fine. But I don't know how you would explain away the global ubiquitous nature of what I'm pointing to.
You know, just to comment on that statement, excuse me, you made, I cannot believe it is 2024 and the Neptards at the top of the planet are still trying to force and socially engineer all kinds of racism. You know, and it's very much a plan. We're not naturally racist. And the other thing that they cannot stand is the fact that the black and the brown skinned brothers and sisters on our planet have the richest heritage and the richest DNA. Their DNA is actually a lot more like you and I. I think you're white. You look white to me. You know what I mean? From where I'm sitting, I'm white. I'm a Celt. I'll kick your ass. strong, but I don't have the same rich DNA as the brown and the black skin. That's why they're so genocided and they're so targeted. And if anyone is offended, again, I don't care. I haven't got time for people to be offended anymore. It's time. But yeah, how dare we ignore our brothers and our sisters and their beautiful history that we came here to learn?
I agree. I'll even say, like Edgar Casey, for instance, not only was the majority of his content about being kind and helping and healing, he said that the like this idea that Atlantis hunting is racist because the Nazis were after Atlantis. So it's like you should see the academic literature and the zealous racist lunacy in the academic world. I know they've turned the page, but it's the same thing. Like, because I'm searching for Atlantis, Ignatius Donnelly, the congressman from Minnesota, probably said these racist things, is not the same thing. Edgar Casey, in fact, said the original red race from Atlantis, the Iroquois, who landed in the United States 12,000 years ago. So, I mean, you could say, oh, that's a mystic or whatever, but the idea that he's associated, or Blavatsky, Steiner, the mystics, the Rosicrucians, or Freemasons, that this is like some racist paradigm is a misdirect. It's insulting, and it's the act of someone desperate to denigrate a belief system that they don't agree with, rather than, how about this? Some people think the pyramid was built around 2500 BC. That's the mainstream consensus. Others think, like the Casey material, that was built about 10,500 BC. Um, you know, Excavate under the part of the Sphinx, more excavations on Giza Plateau. The Scan Pyramids team and other teams have found voids within the Great Pyramid, right? So we get into there. What unfolds will answer the question. You will either find artifacts contemporaneous with the 2500 BC date, or you might find material that would have to be older if indeed the pyramids are older. So for me, it's just like, forget about claims of racism in this and all that garbage. It's like, what will the evidence tell us? What will the dating tell us? So, I feel like because you got this hyper agitated cult of pseudo skeptics, and you do have a cult of true believers too sometimes, in this tribalistic orientation, it just leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. It's just like, carry out the work, carry out the excavations, let's see what we need. And when you're an archaeologist or an anthropologist, you got to be like a cop. Cops take a lot of shit, but to get the respect you deserve as a cop, you got to button it up and just deal with a lot of insanity, right? You got to deal with people with crazy ideas. You got to deal with a lot of insults. It just is, and then you get the respect, just like when you go to your doctor, And I would say that it's on the professionals to be more professional and to stop trying to not just belittle but insult people. That's just not cool and it erodes your credibility, and it reads like a conspiracy to people. It's like, that guy's a dink, he's like, he's using all his considerable intellectual ability to denigrate, marginalize, and disprove something, rather than to objectively and open-mindedly evaluate. So he's thrown red meat to his base, and they think he is right about everything, and there's no objectivity there. And so it's really an insidious game of self-protection and egoism,
Yes.
rather than an objective valuation. And I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. That's where I've learned the most. Maybe Egypt, the Great Pyramid, was built in 2500 BC. I'd be shocked, quite frankly. But let's see what happens. Forget the back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said at the beginning of our broadcast here, honestly, we would save years of nonsense and arguing if people just had the guts to get Elena Danaan on their show. Game over, but they can't because she's too powerful. Now, I want to go back to, you mentioned Botswana. Could you take a
Yeah.
minute? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know everything, neither do people watching, but it's so interesting how you kind of twinkled a little bit as well when you mentioned Botswana, like energetically. Please share what we don't know.
The San people, the indigenous people in Botswana, they have this tradition that Matsang, Seing, emerged from these pools, this sacred site, and he brought the animals and the first humans with him. and he was a six-toed giant. And you can Google it. You can see the area with all the pools. There's carved rock art that displays these giant feet. And what's interesting, in like 2013, there was an article in the Kedia is the local village of the Botswana people who live near there. And there's a couple, there's a photograph in an article, I think the Kedia news site, where they located another location that was several miles from the Matsing site. And they found what this old woman talked about in town, another emblazoned, impressed giant foot with six toes that was the work of Leno Lo Qualaby, and like Matt saying, another giant with extra digits in ancient times. More recent, not as ancient as Mat Singh. So it's more of that corroboration, and they're trying to preserve the site and make it a tourist attraction. So you have in this isolated community of the indigenous wisdom of the San people, tells you the story that matches up with the giant of Gath in the Bible, or the giants of Cornwall, or the Australian Aboriginals, where all of Australia is littered with giant hands and feet with extra digits, 10-foot tall spirit beings with six fingers and six toes, legends of malevolent giants and helpful giants and gods with extra digits. And the oldest statues on Earth, Ayin Ghazal, Jericho, and now Karahan Tepe and Saybirch, are displaying polydactylism. And at Caral, the oldest site in Peru, 3000 BC, they found an idol a couple of years ago with seven fingers and seven toes, a powerful priestess. So, and it's written about by academics in isolation, this idea of polydactylism associated with this, with the divine, the supernatural, the malevolent, and giants. In fact, the Sumer Ibzu is a series of 2,800 tetralogical omens written about in ancient Sumeria that talk about polydactylism and what it means to have like six fingers on one hand, six fingers on the other. And the exorcists, temple priests, and sorcerers of Sumeria were obsessed with polydactylism. So it all ties in like maybe it's a coincidence, maybe there's another explanation, but you know, to talk about Mat Singh, the story is global and ubiquitous.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I will look that up, but I won't Google it, and I certainly won't trust wicked pedophile. Oops, I mean Wikipedia, because one of my good friends, Dr. Christiane Northrup, they've slandered her because she pushed back against the big pharma. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to talk to Northrup. I read a lot of her books and followed her about natural health for a long time. I was going to say I could send you PowerPoints of polydactylism that has all the images, has all the references. The same thing with the androgynous gods. I could send you, like, if you want to scroll through, so you can, so you don't have to take all these notes and stuff like that.
Lovely, lovely. I can maybe share it on Facebook and stuff for people too. Yeah, although we do
Sure.
encourage people, I'm sure you've come across in your hard work and your dedication and your research, people can be such lazy buggers, can't they? They all like that, oh, that's interesting, and then next, next, and and there's you out there doing all the hard work, all the heavy lifting. But again, it's important to know that there are lots and lots of redacted information. It's been interfered with. So going straight to the source, someone like you who's done the work, put the work in, is definitely a much better way to go. And you mentioned that megalithomania, which is Hugh Newman and JJ Ainsworth's company, along with Andrew Collins. I know he's connected to them. They've got lots of your research on that website, megalithomania.com.
Exactly. There's like a Jim Vieira section. There's like 15 different videos and presentations about all these subjects, like the lost world of Edgar Cayce, giants in the Americas, fish gods, and I'm doing updated ones fairly soon as well with kind of new and interesting information, like new evidence from archaeological digs that are happening. Like, I'm sorry, Peru, not Peru, Panama. A couple months ago, there was the tomb littered, with gold that was found. It was kind of this stunning discovery. If you follow like mainstream archaeological stories, you would have heard about it. But they find like there was human sacrifice and gold ornaments everywhere, and they found this idol, this strange looking being, and I analyzed it. I mean, I you know evaluated it, and it has 7 fingers and 7 toes. And I just wrote one of the archaeologists to ask about that. Just more evidence on these finds in real time, displaying the iconography of androgyny and polydactylism, which I feel is just like really stunning. It's like there's a story here. I don't know what it is. It deserves further investigation, but there's no question there's a story here. And if I'm being honest, I'd say I really the tale that I am spinning, I think, is generally true. If that makes sense, or at its core. I don't know all the ins and outs and the details, but I think there are the overseers and the genetic engineers who are some have an association with humanity in good and bad ways. That's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, brilliant. Something else you briefly touched on, a name. You said Blavatsky, Helena
Yeah.
Blavatsky, one of the former, supposedly one of the former theologians on metaphysics. I love reading about her. I've loved studying her over the years. There's so much contradiction on her, who people say she is, accused her of being, and it led into something very dark in some regards. Would you share a couple of minutes of your understanding of Helena Blavatsky, please?
Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky. She wrote Isis Unveiled. She was a mystic. Um, she founded the Theosophical Society. She brought Hindu metaphysics to the West. Actually, I'll say this: that Blavatsky, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons all say the same thing about the past. They say that humans were androgynous and self-fertilizing originally. They say Atlantis was a historical reality and that all their ancient wisdom came from there. They all talk about cataclysms. Their timelines are not synced up, but the general ideas line up with what Plato had to say. Plato said the first humans were androgynous. Plato said that the soul is immortal. And Plato also said that Atlantis was a historical reality. So people focus on him like just Plato. Oh, he said this. Was it a noble lie? Was it a myth? But all these sources are saying the same thing, is what I'm getting at. So Blavatsky talked about root races, kind of like Edgar Cayce. But a lot of what she talked about was, the nature of the soul and metaphysics, and which I find interesting. Like, what are we doing in a body? It's not our natural state. We're renting movie characters with pros and cons, but it doesn't represent like the perfection of who we really are. Like the universe is a projection from the field. Rumi. There is a field beyond concepts of good and bad. I will meet you there. That's what the non-dualists say. The masters, Shankara, Jesus, Buddha. It's like this is a temporary illusion, and that the movie character that we are so associated with is the thing that gets us in trouble, the thing that we try to overly protect or overly identify with. And they would say things like, nothing that happens in time and space alters the perfection of what you are. So these very comforting messages that is shared, like in the Nag Hammadi scrolls, the Apocryphon of John. Jesus he talks about the one, the inexpressible one, and the perfection of it. So that's of interest to me. That's why I study Blavatsky and Steiner and Cayce, along with the other non-dual, like Ramana Maharshi and the non-dualistic masters. So Blavatsky was just one of the things was she wanted to infiltrate Theosophists in the political milieu of her time, right? Not in a subversive way to bring light to the world, but some of the early Nazis used her formula to infiltrate Nazis into political systems. So there's been a conflation that she is somehow, because the Nazis used, and I think the Nazis associated the Sons of Darkness, the Sons of Belial, that Edgar Cayce said existed in Atlantis, with their idea of a perfect race of genetic engineers, of dark wizards. That's where all this Tolkien mythology comes around to. Even Tolkien talked about this great love he had for the myth of Atlantis, and H.G. Wells did as well. These stunning ideas of the past that they rang true to them. Like William Blake also talked about Atlantis. So you have these visionaries saying the same thing. So Blavatsky was conflated with Nazism and malevolence. and I just think it wasn't true. But she was a great make a movie about it, man. She was like a hard drinking, chain smoking, foul mouthed.
Yeah.
She's a piece of fucking work. Yeah.
Yeah, my kind of girl. Like, I love the fact that she was born, into a kind of landed gentry aristocratic environment in Russia, and right, Russia, Blavatsky, Russia, and was had what they said was an arranged marriage of sorts, and married some chinless wonder, and thought, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life, and took off. That's my kind of girl. And yeah, bringing the attention to Hinduism, bringing Hinduism so we can have access to it on so many levels. Their five holy Bibles, the fact that they actually believe in one of their icons or deities, Lord Muruga, is clairvoyant, and some of their the monks I know, the Hindu monks I know in the island of Kauai, one of the Hawaiian islands, for those that don't know what Kauai is, I mean, they are, well, you know what? That's a whole nother conversation. If I go off down that road, and we're never going to get back till next Thursday. But anyway, the Hinduism aspect is wonderful. Again, I'm all for it, apart from the bit where the woman stays at home. Yeah, no. But it's still interesting to look at the beautiful ancient mythos and understandings and the different, people they have, and Lord Ganesha, and I mean, just so many, Shiva, Krishna, Parvati. It's stunning beauty to look at. So moving across or back to Blavatsky, the fascination for me was from the get-go, like, wow, she's really powerful, really strong, she's really interesting. And then sadly, there was elements that, they call them Victorian parlor games, where people would write on a piece of paper a question, put it in a box in a wall, and then an answer would come, and there was a mockery that happened. And I found that part confusing because that's never been clear. Not that I believe it, but what did you hear about that?
Conjecture. It's tough to say. You know, I think the general thrust of what she taught rings true and aligns with so many other sources that if you just took her out of the equation, you would have the mystics and the clairvoyants and the secret societies and the ancient documents saying the same thing about our past. But there's jealousies, there's karma, and all these interactions that it's kind of the purity of the material. Does it ring because you're in the psychic realm or you're in the clairvoyant realm already? So it's like, does it ring true or not? I would read Isis Unveiled and see what you think. If somebody's interested in Blavatsky, yeah, that for me is not like something I put much weight on. The machinations of social characters and what might have happened or not happened. We don't know unless it was like glaringly obvious, which it wasn't. So I think in general she did a good job of transmitting esoteric knowledge to the West.
Good, thank you. That's good. I've never actually asked that question to anyone before, but when you mentioned her name, it just sparked something in me, because as more people are looking at the ancients, the leaders, the metaphysical leaders, the spiritual leaders, and they need to, she's somebody that I would always say, have a look at her. I would say in England, we say, have a bang on that, because I just find it fascinating, and it just kind of opens up a more wider spectrum or scope for discovery, and again, see what gets triggered inside of you. The one thing that does bug me and makes me sad for people is when people look at Atlantis, there's so many people that say, I was a scientist, I was in charge of all the generating crystals that rang at La. Atla is the center of Atlantis and surrounding colonies, because it was thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, I believe. And they can never just be the cleaner or the person washing dishes in the kitchen. It's always got to be some kind of ego maniacal, and that's a shame. I know I was a cleaner. I'm okay with that.
That's like I was saying, the over identification with the movie character. Think transpersonally about all your lifetimes, not like, oh, I was the temple priest and oh, I helped the poor here. It's like I was a serial killer here. I was, like these comic dramas in time and space are dualistic, and we've all done, even in this lifetime, weird, embarrassing things that we're ashamed of or whatever. It's like the over-identification with the content of the movie characters' ups and downs is not the place to rest, you know, your attention. It's to dissociate, if you will, to step back and to align yourself with the force that knows, if you will, a higher power, people would say, to guide your life. And it's not like, oh, I'm so good. Oh, my heart hurts. It's not about phony goodness. It's about
Yeah.
just dissociating from the ego aspects. Yeah, like, oh, because I could spin tales of bullshit because you have an audience that wants to believe, right? There's no peer review. Once again, I could tell, oh, I was the Atlantean priest and I buried these records, and maybe I did, but I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to make myself self-important. You want to be self-deprecating. You want to laugh at your stupid um, tendencies, right? You don't want to take shit seriously, and that's an important aspect. Like, everybody who is wound up into this agitating back and forth, this culture war shit, this tribalism, they all take themselves way too seriously. They don't self-reflect. They don't go to fucking ayahuasca ceremonies. They are possessed by their ego. It's an insidious thing. They're not self-reflective. It bleeds into your relationships, this agitating, arrogant. And I speak for being from the perspective of I've been an arrogant, know-it-all prick in my life too, So everything I say, I'm including my former self, hopefully, into this equation as well. And the moral of the story is like, don't listen to the tyrannical voice in the head of the separate self. It has the operating software of the body has taken over. It's a poor master, but a good servant. That's the thing. There is a force that knows that you want to surrender to. You want to undo your false beliefs, not accumulate ideas about yourself. That's what the masters would say.
Mm. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. I've loved that. All the way through our broadcast, you've kind of broken that down, that psychological piece, because it's so helpful. It is so exciting hearing your research, and a lot of people are really focusing more on the giants, the ancient Nephilim, these 7 scientists, the Akpalu that we believe are awakening, the arcs, the Astrahasis, the flood stories, the cataclysms. This being one of the oldest, the Astrahasis, where Enki, Enlil's brother, let the Earth people know, and Astrahasis, or some people then relate that to the Noah story that came thousands of years later. Same story, all religions, all fables, all the same stories flooding through. I use that word on purpose. But the fact is that we come to learn by connecting our galactic heritage with people who are in actual contact with these physical beings, because they're humans like you and I. If we shot one, it will bleed. That's why we got to separate the lack of knowledge of they have to come into our density. They need technology to do that. They are breathing, walking beings. We got to land that, bring that balance in. But damn it, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, space arc. So it turns out that the animals go in 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. Remember the Noah story when he's building the big old wooden ark? It wasn't a wooden ark. It was a space ark, a fleet. And the animals didn't go in 2 by 2. Are you kidding me? It was DNA samples. And then that lands the mind into another level of thinking. And then what happens? Oh, then the triggering of the religious programming, the death threats, the murderous rage, the put her in prison, she's a Jezebel. It's really sad how people become unglued when you just tap in to something they've believed so hard and they just can't breathe into it.
Absolutely. Buddha, Jesus, all the masters is like, don't agree with what I say. Test it out yourself. Test the hypothesis. Does it ring true? What does your experience tell you? Something like that. Like the space arc actually in this context makes sense because all these bizarre beings purportedly from Sirius are genetic engineers, right? So, because like you get into the cult-like belief in religion, and there isn't a lot of objectivity. It's not like you want to question this. You want to. I want to know what the earliest, if I'm a Christian, the earliest documents say. So I go to the Nag Hammadi, the scrolls. And I read the Apocryphon of John. I read the Gnostic scriptures. I read the Gospel of Thomas. Where Jesus is more like an Eastern mystic wisdom teacher than a fire and brimstone book of Revelation type of guy. So it's like that's just an objective reading of the most ancient documents. So to your point, yes, it's healthy. Like I got friends who are Mormons, I got friends who are Christians, I got friends who are atheists, and I don't like press them on things. I just maybe hopefully guide them, just like believe what you want, but maybe you want to check this out, or maybe you want to see that there's like cult-like behavior that goes on in organized religion, and evaluate yourself if that rings true.
Absolutely. Now, I know we could keep going for hours, and I'm probably going to have to invite you back, Mr. Jim Vieira, because you're just fascinating. And I know that the lovely people that come and love the content that I bring out on my lovely channel that I'm so grateful for, they're going to dig you and they're going to want to know more about you. But let's end on the difference between, because some people really get this confused, a stonemason and a Freemason.
Yes, a Freemason is a member of the, like a Freemasons lodge, and I'm not, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons. A lot of their, amazingly, they talk about self-fertilization in humans. They talk about Atlantis, and I'm sure there was like detours, like Albert Pike was like a Freemason Grand Master or something who seemed like a real POS.
Yeah.
But I know Masons, I know Rosicrucians are really good people who mean well. So I'm not one of these believers, that it's all malevolent by any means. And a stonemason, I'm a dry mason, and I live in Western Massachusetts. We have some of the best quarries in the country, so we use country stone and quarried stone, dry fit to build all kinds of. We build utilitarian patios, walkways, staircases, but we also build art projects, fountains, 12-foot stone towers I built all around town. We rebuild the stone walls like around town. I mean, I'm sorry, on the road we live in the oldest road in the county. So we like these double-sided high Viking walls we rebuild everywhere. And just something that we love to do, and we've been at it for like 30 years. nwstonework.com is our website, and it shows all our work if anybody's interested. Northwind Stonework, nwstonework.com. And it's a very satisfying activity. I have expertise in stone masonry, engineering, a good grasp of geology. So I study ancient sites around the world. I evaluate. There are sites that are purported to be man-made, and I quite frankly think they may be natural. I try to give my opinion on different sites that people have theories about, and I think I'm well versed to go to places like Ollantaytambo in Peru and Egypt, Baalbek, Lebanon. Look at the stone creations there. Look at the feasibility for them being built with the tools and the technology of the time. That's another like Edgar Cayce levitation, lost technology idea that's I'm open to at the very least. So yeah, that's what I do professionally. Once again, that pays the bills, and it's a very satisfying job, and it links me to stone. It links me to the past, and it's a working meditation. It's a karmic
connection
feedback loop, or a work karma feedback loop.
I love that. I love that for you, that you're in the field of archaeology and you will literally have your hands in the dirt, and you're obviously very good at it, because there has to be some real talent to be able to recreate, mend, repair, or put love into an ancient wall, for example, and know, limestone, cement, sand, water, like what are you dealing with? What are those composite materials? You've got to know what you're doing. Like it's not just look it up on Google kind of thing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. It's you get into the flow of it. It's an autonomic behavior or activity, I should say, that you just get into the flow of stone building. It's not like finished carpentry where you got to keep checking and measuring. It's kind of a flow. Like every stone wants to go into place, and it tells you if not, like it will smash your thumb if you go the wrong way or whatever. Like the stones speak to you. And I even said that in one of the new Ancient Aliens episodes about the consciousness of stone, and how, like, I try to drop in metaphysical passages that they made, like we did an Casey biography last year for Ancient Aliens, and a lot of kind of my metaphysical points made it in, which I was grateful for. But
Ah,
I think that's that people are craving that, especially dudes. You know what I mean? That, like, we're told to be tough, we're told to behave in certain ways, but the to be self-reflective, to be vulnerable, to, like, seek peace, to evaluate metaphysics and spirituality, I think is really important. And to live a life oriented around that, where you don't make it about yourself. You don't give, like, I'm not going to talk my game up, but I live literally in a 10-foot by 12-foot tiny cabin. I have no possessions, I swear to God. A beaten up old work truck I drive around, and I've disidentified from the movie character who wanted to be the big star and do all these shows. And I love doing shows, and I'm going to continue to do them. That's not what I'm saying, but my ego personality wanted something external for me and ungratifying, like a bad drug addiction, instead of finding the peace with what you already are within. It
mm,
sounds simple, but it's like the world is like, you get very addictive, very fantasy driven, very self-stimulating, rather than turning within. Now I just seek peace. I sit in silence. I have a meditative mind much more, because the world, the external world, the temporary hits, it's agitating, and it's like a drug addiction. There's no bliss there. There's no joy. There's no
mm.
comfort. There's just like a wound up, fucked up chase for your next hit. And trust me, I'm like doing these shows. The cameras are following me around. There's millions of people. It's like very stimulating, right? So I dealt with that by turning within, and spirituality is a self-study program. That's why I like the Course in Miracles or Ramana Maharshi or the Enlightened Masters. It's like, you are already perfect. Undo the false beliefs in front of that perfection. That is the message. You can read, you can research, and that's cool, but that doesn't change what you are. Undo these false beliefs about yourself. The shame, the guilt, the unworthiness, it's all bullshit. It's all, doesn't matter what you've done, because that's why forgiveness is so important. We've all done twisted and crazy things in other lifetimes, maybe this lifetime. When you forgive another, no matter what the fucked up shit they're doing, you forgive yourself. You're off the hook for all the crazy and embarrassing things you've done. It's a holographic mind, so you're forgiving yourself at every turn. That's what every spiritual teacher throughout human history says. That's just like these other myths and trends that I follow, whether it's Maharshi, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, they all say the same things about what we are in the nature of reality. So that I try to bring that message. It's like, forgive, release. You are spirit, whole and immortal, all is forgiven, released, like that
Mm.
Course in Miracles. Like, take a breath of fresh air, let yourself off the fucking hook. Don't worry. Everything is fine. No matter what the freak show acid trip of the Matrix looks like, it's only temporary. You're perfect. And in fact, when you break through and you have these experiences of the one of reality, I cannot believe I am that. It is so awe-inspiring, and it's just it's mind-boggling. You break out of Plato's cave, but then you come back and tell people and they want to fucking kill you. So
That's
that's a good
brilliant.
news.
That's so brilliant. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing so much of your beautiful self. I wanted to say a couple of things. I've thought it so many times during our broadcast that the wings on your chair literally make you look a little bit like an archangel. Of course, you're not, nor would you say you are, but just so you know, it's like quite the look. I like it. I wanted to ask you also, what does nwstonework.com stand for?
North Wind,
North
North Wind Stonework. Yep.
North Wind. Why did you name your stonemasonry company North Wind, NW Stonework?
Oh, yeah, that's funny. My brother came up with it. I think it's like a Robert Frost. Frost was a great poet who lived in our area. I think it's like this archetypal theme, like North Wind. And
Mm.
it's windy as hell where I live too. Uh, I want to say I'm on Facebook, but I have like low tech skills, so I got like locked out of a couple of my old accounts. But the account I'm on now, you know, is it's me and my brother at Roanoke. he has two hammers in his hand, and I'm sitting down at a geological lab in North Carolina. So that's the Jim Vieira. If you're interested in following me, and half the time I'm posting cat pictures or like raccoons and dogs hugging each other or whatever. But I do post ancient mystery stuff as well, or appearances. If you're interested, please, follow me on Facebook.
I can put the link because you and me on our Facebook connection, that's the one to use, isn't it? Yeah, that's good.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a note to post that, add your Facebook. I'm also gonna add under our broadcast the trip I did with Elena Danaan to the British Museum because it was so beautiful and it so dovetails into your work, Hugh's work, Andrew, I mean, all of them, Freddie Silver, it just dovetails beautifully. I think you'll enjoy it. And I will add well, you can send me the links anyway. We always do that. Let me make sure there's nothing else at this point. God, we could have talked so much about Peru and Cusco too, because I've been there. Sacsay Woman and all those great historical sites. I think, oh, the Starbucks logo. You mentioning the two tails, the Starbucks logo. But do you know there's people that say that because she looks like a mermaid, she's got two tails, but the original image wasn't a mermaid. It was a nature goddess with like the harvest queen. When you look at the real oldest images of that Starbucks, it's just so interesting how that's JJ Ainsworth. That's her symbology. She's very good at symbology, isn't she? That's her lane really. But yeah, I wondered if you knew anything on the Starbucks.
Yes, it's actually Melusine, an ancient goddess, and there's quite a strange story of bloodlines and the Merovingians that are associated. Like there are these themes and mythologies of like kind of corrupt families in Europe and crazy bloodlines and interbreeding that surround Melusine and the Starbucks logo, the being on the Starbucks logo that emerged. Yeah, Melusine. Google her. You'll find more about it. But if you like Melusine, Merovingian bloodlines, you probably find some freaky stuff as well.
Amazing, amazing. Beautiful. Let's suggest some topics for next time you come back, even though you haven't agreed to. I'm sure you don't mind. I know the audience that play on my channel, they are gonna love you, Jim. They're gonna love you. Oh, the moon's out early. So look at it. I'm like ADD. I'm like, oh, fish. Hello, who are you? What am I doing? All over the place. So let's focus. So what would you like to share next time that we may have touched on today? We can go deeper into, or anything we didn't touch on that you want to share.
Yeah, I could talk about ancient stonework sites around the planet. I could talk more about giant myths, legends, finds, the ideas of Atlantis is a really interesting Atlantis in Egypt and that whole story. Casey had some very bizarre things to say about genetic engineering, the creation of hybrids. Those are subjects that people are interested in because the themes once again are ubiquitous and they're pertinent to society today. I think Casey, if he were around, he would say we're having a replay of the sons and daughters of darkness and the sons and daughters of light kind of at war with each other or trying to forge different new versions of Earth, and how these ancient archetypes are playing out once again. All this like gender fluidity, all this androgyny and transgenderism is showing up in society again. And are these like the same themes coming back from the time of the gods? It's just there's a lot of interesting material there. But once again, I'm open to talk about anything that you find of interest that I might have some expertise in. I'd be happy to.
Lovely. We'll invite the audience that watch this to we'll do a Q&A next time. We'll start with a Q&A on some of the great subjects that you've brought here, and then we'll go into other areas that you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I could do live. We could do Q&A on the fly, whatever works for you. I'm happy to do.
Okay, perfect. Well, would you like to address the audience, leave a final message until next time, sir?
Yes, well, thank you for having me on. Thank you for listening. And if you're listening, I would say there was a part of you that wants to hear a metaphysical message. And I know your audience is well versed in metaphysics, but oftentimes it can be metaphysical beliefs about you and your present movie character, right? Jim Vieira, uh, he's good at stonework, can't take care of his basic needs. He's a shitty cook, like pros and cons, right? But we get attached to the ups and downs. We feel insecure if we can't do something well. But it's like play in your strengths and forgive your weaknesses, and uh, like find things that are inspiring for you. It could be meditation, could be helping people, could be prayer, whatever your thing is, and move away from the agitating, conflictual world of social media and forgive over and over again. Everything that comes into your field of awareness is a karmic lesson. Like right now, if we had a dust up and if I didn't forgive it in 6 months, it would have showed up with my neighbor or my girlfriend or my boss or, like in life, right? So you forgive, you release, you don't hold on to judgments because it's a global mind and you are just judging yourself. So it's a long-winded way of saying the best way to orchestrate life I have found is forgive, release, self-reflect, and to understand your eternal perfection and to really feel that internally turn within and forget about the ups and downs. It's in your script, like, oh, I made money, I lost money. Oh, where's my soulmate? Oh, my heart aches. It's like all external bullshit. You're already perfect, and you're here to rediscover that, a hugely important mission, and you're here to share it with people. And just do it through kindness. Just don't talk about your problems one day, and just like listen to somebody and help them. And then you'll be like, I never talk about my fucking problems. I don't have any. I have no conflicts in my life. I do have problems or issues that come up, but I just forgive them. I move on. I try to spend my resources helping people. I try to be a sympathetic ear. It's like, oh, I'm so good because I was entrenched in self-deluded fantasies and activities. So this isn't a criticism about anyone. I'm just like, you know, can you release? Can you forgive yourself? Can you be helpful? That's what you're here for. You're not here to denigrate. You're not here to like be right. You're here to rediscover what you already are. A very simple message. So I appreciate you allowing me to say that and to having such a wonderful channel and being so knowledgeable yourself. I think it's a great synchronistic happening, and I'll happy to come on and support you in any way.
Ah, Jim, that's so nice. Thank you so much. Because, for those that care out there, I know you don't, and I'm certainly not impressed by it. I know you're a good bloke anyway. That's all I need to know. But you're actually mega famous. Like you're known all across the world. Like you said, millions and millions of people watch you. Like they know Jim Vieira. And that's great. And I love that, we got to do what you just did. I love that because we don't see this side of you necessarily on telly on shows because you've got a job to do, and it's really
Yeah,
nice to like see someone's heart, see someone bearing their soul a little bit, in this time of remembering. We got to kick ourselves in the ass and drop the ego, or we're going to have a harder time in the ascension that we're in right now.
bingo. Yep, you're
Yeah.
dead on. Yep.
Bingo bongo. All right then. Well, Jim Vieira, lovely to have you on. Can't wait till the next time. So, guys out there, get your questions in. Don't do it in the live chat. Do it in the comment section. Ask Jim a really good question, and then we'll get to those before we get into the next meat and potatoes. Very soon. Thank you, Jim. To you guys out there, I send you my love. Stay strong. I know it's really bumpy right now. It's not funny. It is bumpy, but stay strong, guys. I send you love from my heart to yours, and I'll see you soon.